My name is George Camberoglu. It is the 4th of January 2026. I have been detained under Section 136 of the Mental Health Act 1983, in my opinion unlawfully, for 4 days without seeing a clinical psychiatrist, which is the part of the Act. Now, the section states that we have 24 hours detainment, whether we're allowed to walk free, we're allowed to be discharged. But because I've been seen to two approved medical professionals who have assessed, owing to the fact that I have pressured speech, that I must be kept in for further assessment. Now, an approved medical professional, an AMP, is making a judgment based on a social matter. I will now read you the code of practice. Okay. Social assessment. Shit. Serious shit, nothing, none of that. Nothing. This is becoming like that. Anyways, I will look up the law in a second, but I researched last night that the role and approved duties of an approved mental health professional, for the record, I'm now going to turn us onto airplane mode to preserve battery life. Right. Role and duties of an approved mental health professional, which amended the Mental Health Act when we were known as approved social workers, by the way. An approved mental health professional, otherwise known as an approved social worker, right? Not a clinical practitioner in any form, not bound by the Hippocratic Oath, and not specifically a doctor in any way, shape or form, formerly known as approved social workers, bruv. The Mental Health Act lays the legal framework in which people can be compulsorily admitted and detained in psychiatric hospitals, and the AMHP has a key role to play in this. It covers members of the public who might be mentally disordered, not that, well, you can allege that if you want, as well as people who have committed criminal offences, again not that, who have gone to court, who may need assessment or treatment for mental disorder. Now we have 3 people. Technically I'm allowed to film them, just to avoid conflict, because yesterday someone was going to threaten to break my phone. I shall not record them. They don't wish to be recorded. Now. Yeah. Anyways. Except for people who are dealt with through the courts, the involvement of the AMP is necessary in order to make decisions about whether or someone needs to be admitted. Assessing doctors can make recommendations that someone should be detained in hospital, but it's up to the AMP to make the final decision. Unbelievable, right? It's up to an approved social worker, formerly known as that, an approved mental health professional with no psychiatric or clinical qualification to make a decision as to whether a service user, I'm going to call myself a service user, here it says patient, okay, to determine whether someone should be in hospital or not. The staff are now laughing and smirking at me. Laughing and smirking. They think this issue is funny. They actually think it's funny. That is a decision for them. I've already recorded their name tags, okay? Every single one of them. And of course I will be reporting it to the Quality Care Commission, as well as writing to the local MP. It's possible for AMPs to have 2 medical recommendations from doctors and choose not to immediately make an application, giving the patient a short period of time to, say, engage with services, comply with medication in an attempt to avoid hospital admission. One of our principles is to practice in the least restrictive manner. It is also the responsibility of an AMP to ensure the law is being applied correctly. Now I didn't know this before, but I mentioned to the AMP that my rights are being violated here. Complete disregard. I'm being kept here for assessment because of pressured speech. Pressured speech. Okay, now obviously you can understand I've been here for 72 hours. You're going to understand there's going to be a bit of duress here. Okay? But actually I'm in very good spirits. An AMP can be a social worker, a psychiatric nurse, an occupational therapist, or a clinical psychologist, but not a medical doctor. We have to comply with statutory requirements, including attending 18 hours relevant training per year. 18 hours training per year. 18 hours for the whole year training. And succeed in getting through a reapproval process every 5 years. So every 5 years, these AMPs are now up for reapproval. Of course, I will be complaining about it from every single AMP here. Every single one. Of course. The AMP role is a complex one. It is also unique amongst the task of social. It shouldn't have to get to this. The task of social workers and other mental health professionals in that the AMP is acting as an autonomous professional rather than an agent of their employees, whether it be a local authority or an NHS trust. An AMP cannot be told by a manager to go out and section someone. An AMP cannot be told by a manager to go out and section someone. Okay. All they can be asked to do is conduct an assessment under the MHA and reach their own conclusion based on all the evidence. That's conjecture, but you can read, if you like to look into behavioural psychology, you might be able to look into the behavioural psychology of this case, and you can make your own deductions. Okay. Right. Next point. I'm going to read the entirety of this, and then we're going to get to the point. There's only one more page. This is from derbyshire.gov.uk. Random fact, Derbyshire in the Midlands. Home place of Brian Clough, manager of Nottingham Forest and Derby County. Won 4 league titles, 2 European Cups. Brian Clough. And he said on national TV, on BBC, but I wanted to win it better, Don. What he meant by that is Don Revie, the England manager, won the division title for Leeds. Sorry, I'm going on a little tangent here. Going off on a tangent. It's not that. It's that he wanted to win the title better than Leeds United. Because Leeds had a reputation for being dirty. Breaking tackles, and not that. For bending the rules of the game. Right? And he wanted to win it better. Well, he did. He went on to win 2 European Cups. He had to go to the 2nd division and to the 3rd division. Brighton and Hove Albion, Derby County, then Nottingham Forest. Brighton and Hove, then Nottingham Forest. Stuart Pearce played for him. They called him the Psycho because he missed a penalty against against Germany in 1990. Come back in Wembley, and as Gazza said, he didn't just place it in, he whacked it in. He whacked it in. And why did I always like Stuart Pearce as a player? Because he wasn't afraid to look at all those England fans in the eye and say, I missed that penalty. I fucked up, I'm sorry. Give me the ball. And when they said who's going to take it, he said straight up. And he smashed it in that. I'm going to pretend to be Stuart Pearce, just for fun and shits and giggles. That's my best impersonation of Stuart Pearce, 1996 European Championship semi-finals. You can Google it. And the entirety of the terrace, all the fans watching, bowed their heads and said, Stuart Pearce, respect, brother. Number 3, bro. Brian Clough managed that man, and he never won a title with Nottingham Forest, 1986. He wasn't part of the European Cup winning team. Back to this. Okay. Right. The AMP will draw on all the information available on that individual, not just the medical and clinical factors. Right, so obviously the context that we're in here. This includes their individual social and cultural circumstances. There we go. Now, that's obviously not been done. Okay? So I'm going to allege here that the AMP has not drawn on all the information available at all. The interview was cut short, and the social and cultural circumstances were not taken into account at all. The possible risks and protective factors. I'm now going to go inside because I don't want the ladies to be disturbed. Sorry for you disturbing you. The possible risks and protective factors, as well as their knowledge of mental illness and the legal process, in order to try and reach a just and equitable conclusion which will balance the rights of the patient with their possible need for protection and treatment. Okay? So this includes their individual social and cultural circumstances, the possible risks and protective factors, as well as their knowledge of mental illness and the legal process, right? In order to try to and reach a just and equitable conclusion which will balance the rights of the patient with their possible need for protection and treatment. Okay? So we're balancing the rights of the patient with their possible need, right, for protection and treatment. Okay? Today, a doctor walking past, he didn't even speak to me, didn't even look at me in the eye. He didn't even say hello to me, he didn't ask my name. He walked past me, completely ignored me, and then he said to a nurse that he thinks that I should take medication. Without any form of assessment. Again, I'll be reporting that. It's all on camera. Of course I refused. I don't need medication. I'm absolutely fine. Fucking hell. Shit. The toilet was blocked today. I'm going to show you the toilet. A gentleman cleaned it. He had a Jamaican necklace on, with the Rastafarian colours. I assume he's from Jamaica. He had a slight Jamaican accent. Not that. Toilet is now unblocked. Fantastic. We need a brush to get scrape the shit off the fucking interior of the bowel, so it's now a clean toilet. The basin is blue, if you must know, and white. There's specks of shit on the fucking thing. I don't know why we're talking about shit. Fucking shit. Anyways, random. Too much information? Skip that part. I'll do a disclaimer in the video. If you want to skip that part, skip it. I'm not an influencer, by the way. I don't know. Shut up. Sorry, that's just me being silly. Sometimes I like to be silly. Not in a mental health crazy way. I just like to be silly. I'm trying to balance all my psychological aspects. The aspects of my mind. Guess what? It's my mind. We got to the point where we realised about, by the way, random behavioural thinking. If you want the explanation, I can't believe we have to go into this, about wiping your ass on your own. I had to go back to when I was living in the squat in Stroudley Walk. I couldn't wipe my ass. And how I had to figure things out for myself. How I basically, the psychology of the group, how I basically lost the support of the group for various reasons. And it took me 3 years to rebuild myself from scratch. Shit. And we got to the point where I've now realised that in the same broader context of the society, people are really struggling because that's it. There are rifts and structural tensions within society, which means that people that were before receiving help in a lot of different ways aren't, and people that before weren't receiving help are, and things are changing rapidly. Not that. I don't want to talk about the climate here. I've written to my MP. Well, I've written to the MP for Holborn and St Pancras. You can obviously, that's the Sakir Starmer. Because I was abused in the police station, I was threatened by security. Again, I was offered medication without any prescription, any assessment. I was refused food. Again, people are laughing. They think it's funny. Or maybe they think they're laughing at someone else. But quite clearly here, the code of practice has been broken. People think it's funny to see people in a difficult situation. Several times I've been laughed at, smirked at, just dismissed. Now, if we were outside in the open, I wouldn't have a problem. But the fact that I'm being detained here, it's a bit of that complex. They call it the prisoner captive, the prison complex. Ask a security guard at a prison; they'll be able to tell you better. And ask an inmate. They seem to be solving things much better than here. Do you know why? Because the prison guards and the prison inmates are bound by the law, and they're trying to find some sort of common ground. Whereas here, the law is actually starting to not apply. In the squat, there was no law. That's why I went completely backwards. The law is an invention which has helped save time and progress human society. Living in a society without laws or rules, we had one. I don't want to keep on referencing the squat, but living in a lawless society is a backward thing, and people will slide into norms and behaviours of the past, like sort of, I call it fiefdomism. Basically the idea that you have one big cheese, or you have one leader and everyone else is subordinate, either by threats of violence or power. Now here, obviously, if people want to do that and they want to use their power, they have a lot of power without the law, a lot of power. I can't get my own food. I'm not allowed to walk outside. I don't have a right to privacy. However, the law applies here. So this crazy idea doesn't work because it's not reality. The reality is the law governs this place. The law doesn't govern this place, regulates this place. Okay? Doesn't govern it. The governor is a politician. The law regulates the behaviour of people here, and people have the right to make certain decisions that may impact the law, that may breach the law. If it breaks the law, then decisions will have to be taken. And I'm taking the relevant steps to ensure the protection of the law and the well-being of primarily myself and other people here. Okay? Now let's finish off this point. The AMP, the Approved Medical Health Professional, formerly known and approved social worker. Well, I don't want to mean it in condescending, but that is what until 2007 they were called. We've got problems here now. On all the information on that individual, not just the medical and clinical factors. This includes their individual, social and cultural. I'm sorry for saying if there's problems here, but I'm sorry for saying there's problems. Sorry, really. Pause. I'm very sorry. Seriously, I'm sorry for saying that we don't have problems here. I'm sorry for saying there's problems here. I now have to do a pause. I have to process this thing, and then I will continue my video. Have a great day.